Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching this in-depth ag forecast for Australia. Well, a couple of weeks ago, I got a few messages from some of you about articles you've been reading or things you've been hearing about with respect to the Antarctic polar vortex. So this is what it looks like. It's deep in the stratosphere. It is strongest in the middle of winter, and what we look for is any sort of misshapen view of it. Okay, so as you look at it right now, it looks like a pretty nice round donut. If it started to have big lobes or places where it pinched in or bulged out, we would be talking about a highly disrupted polar vortex, and it could have major implications on the temperature and precipitation pattern across most of the southern hemisphere, but especially parts of South America, South Africa, and then into Australia and New Zealand. As it stands, it's pretty stable right now. I just wanted to kind of bring this up because some of the discussion about it will be monitored, and I'd like to show you how we monitor it. This is looking at the winds deep in the stratosphere at 60 degrees south, and you have an envelope of values, so you can see the darker lines on the outside here and here representing the max and the minimum strength of the polar vortex. You can see last year's data in this color here and this year's right there. Now we're about to reach a peak in the polar vortex strength, and what we're watching for is just to see if the current year, both what's been observed and what's forecast, is staying above or below the average line. Okay, so the average line is that third line I drew in the middle. And the reality is it's pretty strong right now. So what we often think about with a strong polar vortex is its ability to capture and hold a lot of cold air and not let it out into big lobes that can sometimes really perturb and change the flow of the atmosphere. So to be honest, I understand that we heard a little bit about this, but the polar vortex is still quite strong for its typical self this time of year. So I wanted to clear that up. What has changed is much more fascinating. And I don't show this very often, but it's something I look at every single day. Now what you've got here is from the North Pole to the equator to the South Pole, all right, going from, well, the end of April through May, June, and now most of the way through July. And the color shading on this represents something called the vertical and zonal integral of total atmospheric angular momentum, which is a mouthful, but what it basically means is how fast is the atmosphere moving with respect to normal and with respect to the rotation of the Earth. That's what the normal part of this is. So we're looking at anomalous flow, and this is what you need to see. This is what controlled so much of our weather coming out of June into July. Okay, so that's from the equator to about 30 degrees south, and this was the much farther to the south displacement of the jet stream winds. Remember, we kept looking at that, like, look, these jet stream winds, the southern annular mode, all of these things were just showing us that our jet stream was slightly displaced away from where it could be to give us the flow we would need to start to break a drought. And in my last video, we were about right here, and we were seeing the end of this. And what's since happened is we've had a little bit of a reversal. There's been a slowing of the wind here, and it's increased in speed there out of the west. And that is actually a much, much bigger story than the polar vortex over what's controlling our near-term weather. You can see it if you look at this particular graph, which shows the Antarctic oscillation, which is also known as the southern annular mode. Throughout much of June into early July, it was climbing in value. And then about the time that momentum switch happened, we saw it plummet back into below average values, and it's maintained that. Now, the forecast is always a big mess going forward, but the average seems to be, somewhere, near average or slightly below average when you look at this index value. So in other words, the southern annular mode has got a little bit of a negative bias to it. Now, when we think about that, what this is doing, what this is driving, is that in the near term, we're getting this. And that is a deep trough. It's got some cold air in it, yes. Is it associated with the big polar vortex? No. But is it something different from what we've been seeing? Absolutely. And it's going to start to just change the pattern, especially in the near term, to much more favorable. And what I want to know is this whole wave train, see it here, 1, 2, 3, 4. Really, I could start back over here, 5, 6. Are these going to continue to move through the flow in a way that impact more of Australia? And I've got some near-term evidence that I think is positive in that regard, but I want to be very, very careful in what I'm about to say with respect to this, okay? So when I think it through, I'm looking at all these different precipitation maps, which are always on the website I've built for you. And it looks wet, right? I mean, we see moisture coming through this pattern. We're going to take a deeper dive in this in just a few seconds. But it's really about the positional strength of the jet stream going forward. And there it is. And that is in the right position to kick off lows that spin up. They spin up here and here, and they're going to move across over the next 5 to 7 days, and they're going to really be able to tap into some moisture and this is a pretty vigorous pattern. I mean, it's got movement to it. Now, thinking all of that through, let's kind of go have a quick look at what's going on right now. So let me slide over. Sorry, I just opened that up for the US. Let's get down here to Australia. We've already got our first frontal boundary moving through, and there's some precipitation as we speak. Well, as I speak here, it's very early in the morning for you, very late in the evening for me here the day before. But there's already some moisture coming into Western Australia. And that's because by the time you all get a chance to view this, you're going to see a pretty powerful front sliding its way from Western Australia towards South Australia. And the unfortunate part of this is this particular system is going to pack some pretty strong winds overall. Okay, and just to show you how strong these winds are going to be, this is just one model forecast of maximum cumulative wind gusts. In other words, what's the model think the fastest winds will be? And this is what it's predicted. Now, I apologize. I realized something here. I made some of these maps in miles per hour. So if you kind of zoom in here, you can see that we're expecting with this system 40, 50, maybe even 60 mile an hour winds to move across parts of Western Australia, South Australia, a little bit into the Northern Territory, and then getting over here, Queensland, New South Wales, and Victoria. And so this system's got a bit of a punch to it. But overall, let me see if I can get an update on this. Overall, this pattern that's coming through, okay, this is the latest I've got. This pattern that's coming through it's wet. And so with the wind is going to come the chance for bringing in some precip. So over our next 2 weeks, there's a pretty strong signal that we are going to be getting, especially this week, in the next 5 to 7 days, quite a bit of moisture out of this. Okay, back to the wind discussion. Let's go over here to winds, and let's just kind of look at the timing of these winds before we go back and look at precipitation from a single model. So here we go, working our way through Thursday, 9:30 p.m. Adelaide time. This is now getting into Friday morning. And there is a deep low spinning its way up right along the coast. And with it, we are going to get some strong winds moving through this weekend. This is now Saturday getting into Sunday. And then you see there's another low that follows it right here. This one comes in on Monday. It goes forward into Tuesday and Wednesday. It's weaker overall as we look at the second system by midweek next week. But it's got some winds with it as well. But what I continue to see is another low spinning up here, another low spinning up here. And every time we see these lows spinning up in the models, it starts to get us just thinking about what the precipitation type and intensity are going to look like and how it's going to move through the system. So let's get into that, and then we'll look at total precipitation. So this was about the time I was recording, or a little bit afterwards. So that's the rain we just saw on the radar. You'll notice that as this spins up through the day on Thursday, getting into early Friday morning, it's a tight low. And you can see the spacing of the isobars are tight. That indicates a tight pressure gradient, and therefore that's where your winds are coming from. That's Friday morning, getting through Friday afternoon and evening, playing out till Saturday. Look at the front extend all the way up to Queensland here. And then as we work our way forward into the weekend, that low spins through Victoria, out of New South Wales, and then it's off to the ocean here. There's our second low. That's the one that I said midweek next week is coming through. It's a flatter low in terms of its north-south positioning, and it's weaker, but there's more rain coming through with this. And that's just out 7 days. Now, when you look at how much precipitation we're expecting to get out of that, let's go ahead and load this up from the European model, and just to get a sense of what this may look like. So starting this off again, Thursday morning, and just playing through the weekend, we see that these precipitation totals are decent. Some places have the potential for picking up 30 to 40 mils of rain. And if you just play it out for the next 10 days, I've got plenty of moisture coming in this particular pattern. I wanted to show you it another way. This is just a probability map. So the chances of getting at least 12 millimeters of rainfall are shown here over the next 10 days. And it's 90 to 100% chance across areas that we've been discussing have been in drought. It should make sense why this section is going to be drier, and that is because the flow of these systems is going from the west to the east, and as a result, you're going to get the rain shadow effect here. In other words, it's not the setup that curls the moisture in from the east. But the chances of picking up 24 millimeters of rainfall, take a look at the coastal areas in Western Australia or around Adelaide to the south, getting along the River Murray here, and then pushing up against the higher elevation. And 50 mils of rain, if we just kind of look at it, there are a few places that will likely grab that much moisture out of this particular system. Now, of course, the big question is this just a fluke, a one-off, or is there more that's going to be coming in this particular pattern? As I look out there, farther into the week 2 time frame, it's not a dry setup. There's still more flow coming through this. And overall, while we're not aggressively wet, there's a stripe in through here that's drier in the models. it's not giving us over to a very, very dry picture as we finish July and get into the first 6 or 7 days of August. And that's ubiquitous across all the models. They're all kind of showing the same thing. So what's important about this is where we've been so far this month, right? We know we're dealing with deficits in moisture that continue to be problematic given our recent drought scenario. And while there's been some heavier rains that have come in coastally as of late, this is now going to start to fill in the interior better. And we're also going to be seeing, areas that have been deep in drought in South Australia picking up moisture. We're also going to see this for the coastal parts of Western Australia. So really a lot going on here. Now, you notice I've not talked too much about farther to the north. That discussion is coming, and I'll show you where in just a few seconds. And the total precipitation, we just go back to it here. Where was that? Right here. You'll notice throughout parts of Queensland, we're doing better on precipitation here, but the farther north you go, the drier the signal is, right? And that, I think this is more common in winter than any other time of year that we tend to get this bias toward the south. All right, the other aspect of this conversation needs to be about temperatures. And as we get into early tomorrow morning, this is something we're going to look out for. You'll notice that down through here, we're going to be watching for frost coming through this pattern. That's 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, or excuse me, today. You're all going to be watching this today. I'm thinking Thursday's tomorrow for me. But as we go forward, take a look at the overnight temperatures on Thursday night into Friday morning. Yeah, that's some pretty chilly air that's going to be moving into this area. So there's going to be a relatively widespread frost threat out of this early Friday morning. Just want to make sure I get my timing right. Single digits also out here in Western Australia. As we play it forward, okay, you'll see where that front goes through. So there's the cooler air west. We had a bit of a warmer trend here through the rest of the weekend compared to where we were. But there's more cold air coming. This is Monday into Tuesday when that next front swipes through. And by Tuesday morning next week and by Wednesday morning next week, we've got more of that really chilly air, single digits, a few places getting into the negative single digits here with respect to temperatures. And that just gets us out, the next 5 or 6 days overall. Bigger picture temperature pattern. Okay, so this is the next 5 days. As we slide this forward, there's quite a bit of chilly air with this pattern. You get more cloud cover, you get more chances for rain, you also get more fronts, and the net effect of that is we're drawing in some cooler air as we work our way into the beginning of August and even that first full week of August. So this is not an overly warm pattern. Okay, I want to know how long does it last? And the big question for me is going to come back to where we started. Can I just do that real quick? This is the trough that's invigorating the jet stream that is driving the systems. We need to see where this is going to be in 3, 4, 5 weeks from now. And some of the longer range models, which are here, are putting more low pressure as we get into August, more north of New Zealand, and no longer having the strongest perturbation of lower pressure here. Now, as a direct result of that, some of these longer range models, they're not dry, okay, but they're not as wet as what we had seen. So the newest outlook for the month of August from the European model, which in my opinion has been performing better in Australia than it is anywhere else in the world, it was looking something like this. All right. Now, if we start packing in low pressure here, this will change the precipitation patterns along the coast. Right? And so we'll kind of flip-flop on what we've just seen here in the forecast. But I think this is pretty robust. And it's interesting, BOM kind of agrees. Their 1-month outlook for August, has a similar flavor to it overall. Okay? Now, as we think all of that through, I want to show you some of the bigger picture things that are changing, that if they change will be significant. Now, we look at these every once in a while, but let me just make sure you understand what I'm talking about. Whenever you look at these diagrams, time is on the y-axis. So this is basically today, and it goes all the way through the beginning of September. Now, what you're looking at is in these colors, this is where there is rising motion in the atmosphere. And in these colors, this is where there is sinking motion in the atmosphere. And what you're really looking at here is the movement of the MJO. And right now, the MJO is in phase 6, right? See here? And very soon, it's about to reset over to the Indian Ocean, which is this, and move toward Australia. Now, what that should mean is that while I showed you the August forecast is not aggressively wet, the more we move the MJO back over to this area, the more we start to bring in a tropical component to our flow. That's a big idea. And if it's summer, we care a lot about this because this is huge for summer rainfall, summer moisture transport, and things of that nature. But this is certainly moving back as we approach the month of September, the end of August and the beginning of September. It's all MJO, okay? If that occurs, this makes a lot of sense. You see, this is the newest forecast from the European model looking out at the month of September. And again, you notice how it's not a dry forecast. So please just keep all of this in the back of your mind as we go forward, because it's all related to this. I'm not sure if you've seen this lately, but if we just open this up in a new tab here real quick, this is what's going on with ocean temperatures in the middle of the equatorial Pacific. We have started to see since the beginning of July a drop in ocean temperatures almost back into La Nina-like behavior. And if you look at the current ocean temperatures and compare them to the difference in the global mean, let's just go look at that. I mean, there's been a lot of cool water that's been surfacing here, and the Western Pacific warm pool's been pushed over, toward Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, this area. And what I'm so focused on with this, what is so important to me about this, is that our wind pattern now, for not just since this winter solstice, but before that, has continued to show stronger trade winds here and stronger trade winds there. And stronger trade winds as we approach spring will begin to indicate that we're going to probably develop another weak La Nina-like pattern here. You can already see what's going on with these trades over through parts of the Indian Ocean. And that may change once we get fully into spring. But this can't be ignored. That is kind of the rebuilding of a La Nina, a double dip, if you will. We had one last year. We're going to be looking for another one this year. The probabilities right now as we go forward, into August, September, October, November, or into the heart of summer is higher probability, according to the Climate Prediction Center, of having La Nina than anything else. If anything, I'd call this neutral to weak La Nina. That seems to be where we're headed. But the way that some of the models have responded is something I really want you to see. So I want to finish this up with a bit on global long-range outlooks, and we're going to go look at the new IRI multi-model probability forecast system. This is just released between our last two videos, and this is August, September, October precip probabilities. So look at that. That is what I'm talking about. They're going to continue to show you wet because they want to plant the MJO somewhere in here and keep the trade winds running across the Pacific and giving us the best rising motion here. So that's August, September, October. There's September, October, November. This is October, November, December. And what we continue to see is wetter signal. Now, so much of this is going to be predicated on the successful behavior of the atmosphere to act like La Nina. And you know that I'm going to tell you, take it with a grain of salt, because we are not yet fully established into that pattern. I've just showed you the trade winds are moving, but I think there's more to this we need to be thinking about. If you don't mind, I'm going to go back to the August, September, October and just bring you up to speed on a few things, okay? Internationally, the NDVI data, satellite-based health data across China, all of its growing areas right now combined, is the highest on record. It is also the highest on record in the U.S. Corn Belt, although we've had some extreme heat moving through the Corn Belt, which is happening right around pollination. We're unsure what it's going to do to our yields, but there's still some risk around that, although overall the crop is the best we've ever seen. Throughout Europe, it has started to storm again in Central Europe as of late, breaking the drought, but France's NDVI values are very low and the wheat crop there has been compromised. We are expecting drier late summer and fall conditions over parts of Russia as well. This will be important for the sowing of the next winter wheat crop later on. But the big thing I'm concerned about is as I go out there to September, October, November, and even October, November, December, is that the models continue to show wetter than normal or near normal rainfall here for the start of the South American monsoon. And we do expect them to increase acreage on their soybean crop by another 4% this year. That would be following historical trends. And if the rains come on time or early, they will establish a large crop early and get their entire crop counter going quickly. Is there risk in southern Brazil, into Uruguay, and into Argentina of having some drought develop in this situation? There is. We're going to have to continue to watch that very carefully. But that kind of brings you up to speed on a lot of the things I'm paying attention to internationally as well. But with that, I think I'll wrap it up and say be prepared for the stronger winds coming through if you're across the whole of the south of Australia and the rains that are going to accompany it, plus the chilly temperatures. We'll see where this all lands us in a couple of weeks. Next time I talk to you, I will have new model data, and I'll look forward to kind of sharing that with you. So take care. We'll talk then. Thanks.